Today we're diving into season 2 of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Apparently MomTok is very busy modernizing our faith and fighting against the patriarchy, and I cannot look away. I'm going to share my thoughts and opinions on the fascinating claims they made about our faith, while also getting into some of your hot takes at the end of the episode. This is a super fun and casual conversation, so I'm so glad you are here, and welcome to Blonde Apologist. Hello friends, and welcome to a new episode. I'm so glad you're here. Sorry last week I didn't have an episode. I've been really busy. Summer is in full swing. We've been traveling and I just didn't get to it. I should probably change my bio from saying a new episode every Friday to a new episode most Fridays. But I wanted today's episode to be all about the secret lives of Mormon wives, because I watched it so that we can talk about some of the claims made about our faith and the way that it is represented throughout the show. So there's some main plot points that happen in the show that are a reflection of our faith that I want to talk about. So I'll be sharing those and kind of going in the order that they came out in the show. And then at the end, I want to share some of your comments and your thoughts on the show that were sent to me in my DMs. First, let's just start with my overall thoughts of season 2. I did not enjoy season 2 nearly as much as I did season 1. Season 2 felt so forced. The Mormon angle is so obviously pushed by production, and it feels to me that they use the name for clickbait, but it does not come across natural in the show. It feels like there has to be these forced moments where they talk about Mormonism, but it seriously doesn't come across naturally with this group of women. And it just doesn't seem to flow with the show. Like, I feel like they need to almost pivot and move away from Mormonism. I think it would be a better show, personally, because I like reality shows. I am not too good to watch The Real Housewives. And as I'm watching this, I'm like, why is this so different from Real Housewives? Because I enjoy Real Housewives, but I felt like I had to force myself to finish season 2 for the podcast. I was like, it didn't have my attention. I was so over the drama and the mean girl vibe. It's just too obvious that these women aren't actually friends. It's not natural, even for the sake of MomTok, which they say so frequently throughout the show. It just, I don't know, everything feels like they're trying to force me to believe this idea that MomTok is this really powerful group of women and they're all really friends and they're all Mormon. None of it feels real. None of it is real. And so I just wasn't interested. I'm gonna watch the next season, I'm sure, but I hope they do a better job. I hope they can find a way to make it seem more natural and not so production heavy. Anytime the show does bring up church stuff, it feels super random, it's just thrown in there. They'll say something like, at the church, we're taught that you need to forgive others or love your neighbor, or that we're not supposed to have sex. And I'm sitting there oh, okay, when was the last time you actually listened to something that was said at church and took it to heart? Because it honestly is hard for me to imagine these women sitting in a Relief Society hearing these lessons. And I have no problem with them claiming Mormonism. I said that from the very beginning when the show was announced. It absolutely is their culture, their heritage, and their roots, their background, their upbringing. It all comes back to our Mormon faith. And I'm not here to gatekeep and say you can't call yourself Mormon just because you don't go to church or do these things anymore. But when you're watching the show, it seems pretty obvious to me that they're not Mormon. And I think most people outside of our church watching the show understand that as well. I mean, most of them even flat out say I don't go to church anymore, or I've stopped going to church. And so I'm also not worried about how it reflects on our faith. I think most people are smart enough to see past the facade of this very curated show. But as I said, with last season, I wish these girls nothing but the best. It's actually painful and hard for me to watch the show because they are going through so much. There is so much crap happening in their lives. And in some ways, I just want to hug them and be why don't you come to church? Please come to church and feel some of the rest that you can find through God. If you go to Jesus Christ and your community at church, some of these things will be lightened, and I want them to have that experience. And so it is hard to watch because they are stepping away from our church, and it seems like their lives are just in shambles. And in some ways, it's just a testament to living the standards of the gospel, because they want to mock us so much for all the rules we have within our belief system. And I look at this show and I'm like, I feel like those rules have been some of the greatest blessings in my life, because I look at where I'm at and how happy I am and fulfilled. And I want that for these women. And it's so close to them. Like, it's right under their noses, but they're never going to see it for what it is. And that's kind of hard for me to watch. But let's just jump into some of the things that I saw that I want to talk about from the show. They start the first episode with a very bold claim. I want to say Macy said it. She says, MomTok is going to continue to push the church, the people, and the culture to modernize towards today. Okay, so here's the thing. You can't modernize the church, at least not in the way that they seem to mean it. The doctrine and core beliefs of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints aren't something that shift just because of a few influencers have decided that they want to shake things up. That's not how revelation for the church works, and we of course know that. But as for modernizing the culture and the people, I don't think they're the first to do it. Like, let's be honest, these women are not the first Mormons to drink coffee, to test boundaries, or even to engage in swinging. Like, that has been around and has part of the rumor mill in Utah for decades. So acting like they're some kind of groundbreaking rebels leading women into this new era just feels like a stretch to me. But again, that's the goal of the show, is to convince you that that's what they're doing. And I don't know if these women even believe it themselves. Like, genuinely, like, the things that they say is almost like they have this mentality that they're such a blessing to Mormon women because they're fighting the patriarchy. They say that a lot too. Like, Layla in the first episode says, I think that the church did have an issue with MomTok trying to break the patriarchy. I'm curious, like, what to them was a sign that the church was bothered by MomTok and their threat to patriarchy. Like, it really feels like they were just given these lines to create drama and intrigue, and I'm not seeing them out here organizing grassroots movements or holding study groups or actually trying to engage with church leaders to make change. Like, it's all so surface level because it's just sound bites for a show. And okay, I'm being so critical. I'm sorry if this is too negative, but if MomTok has genuinely made a positive impact in your life, like whether as a mom or as a Mormon woman, beyond just entertainment, like, please tell me. I would love to hear those stories because I just think it's all bogus. But I'm all for the show. I'm all for the women doing what they want to seek their fame and to get their bag. They have every right to do so. I just have to call them out on some of the claims that they make. One aspect of the show that I think is fun, that I enjoy, is watching the Utah culture just front and center. Like, I do think in a lot of ways this is such a strong reflection on Utah culture. And I would make the argument that it is Utah culture, not Mormon culture. This past week, I got this message from this lady who's not a member of our faith, or maybe she's left our faith, I'm not sure. But she went on this rant and telling me how toxic Mormon culture is and how horrible it is, and forcing people to seek perfectionism. And the things that she was saying, I wanted to be like, this is Utah culture. You're describing Utah culture, which absolutely is influenced by the Mormon faith. But there are other things that make Utah culture what it is. There's a lot of money here, and there is not enough diversity. And that creates some funny and weird dynamic and weird culture that I don't like about Utah. I'm totally comfortable calling out our culture where there's issue. But I hate when people just lump it in as this is Mormon culture. I'm like, the Mormon faith is a worldwide religion, and we have more members of our faith who live outside of the United States than inside. So if you're going to look at Utah and you're going to look at some of these women and think it's a reflection of the entirety of the faith, you're obviously just naive. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox. I feel like I have been kind of ranting for way too long. And maybe too negative. I'm sorry, you guys, if this episode is too negative. Maybe I'm not in the headspace to do this. So let's just go through some of the storylines of the show and talk about them. starting strong with Jen and Zach. If you didn't watch season 1, let me just give you a quick recap. In season 1, the girls go to a Chippendales stripper show in Vegas. Jen's husband, Zach, finds out and completely flips out on her. He says horribly nasty things to her and threatens divorce. And keep in mind that Jen didn't even know they were going to a stripper show, and she tried to leave before it even started. But like, Zach didn't care at all, and he was quick to tear his wife down, and it was really sad, okay? So fast forward to season 2, Jen and Zach are now separated, according to the show. I've seen a lot of people online speculating that it was just for the show to make them look better, because online Zach received so much hate and everyone wants them to get divorced. So they're separated. Zach comes to meet with Jen and asks to move back in. And Jen talks about how she is now standing up for herself in this marriage. And she, quote, says, "Within the Mormon church, it is very expected for women to be submissive to their husbands." Yes, the claim that we can never get away from is that we are submissive wives. You know, take me back to Ballerina Farm last summer. It was the narrative that Mormon women basically are servants and they tend to all their husbands' needs, and we have no voice or power in our marriage. Like, seriously, can we try a different angle? Because this one has been so overplayed, and I feel like I've talked about it in a couple of my episodes at this point. But let's just say it again, make it loud and clear. We are taught and we believe that husband and wife are equal partners. If that is not what your relationship looks like, that is not because of your Mormon upbringing, that's because of a crappy husband. So let's put the blame where the blame actually belongs. And Jen, you have every right to stand up to your husband if he's going to try to walk all over you. But that doesn't make you a unique Mormon woman for doing that. That makes you a faithful, strong, confident, normal Mormon wife. Now, I want to step back for a second and consider why this is always being told about our faith. Why there's this narrative that Mormon women are oppressed and have to be submissive to their husbands. Traditionally, in our faith, when women have babies, they become stay-at-home moms. I'm not saying that that's everyone. It's interesting because in my family, like starting with my mom and all of my older sisters, they all were working mothers. And so I'm not saying one way is right and one way is wrong. Just traditionally, Mormon women, and maybe I should stop saying Mormon. Maybe I should just start saying members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Women. It's just too long, you guys. I'm sorry. I know. And in different settings, I use the full name, but for the sake of time on the podcast, I think women of our faith tend to stay home with their children. And because of that, people on the outside looking in see the stay-at-home moms and they assume they're oppressed. That is the narrative that society pushes today, that women who choose to stay home with children are oppressed, that they wouldn't want to be doing that naturally, but feel forced to do so. And all women should want to work and want to work. And because we have a ton of stay-at-home moms in our faith, then that gets lumped into oppression. And I also saw this influence the culture when I was dating at BYU. Men who had been raised in a home where the mom was a full-time stay-at-home mom sometimes would expect and want that for their children because they reaped the benefits of it. And so they wanted that. And when I was dating at BYU and I was getting serious with someone, I would share and make it clear that I didn't know what my work and family life balance would look like. And there was a chance that I wanted to pursue a career and have a family. And if there was significant pushback because I wanted to do that, then I knew that this was someone that I didn't want to continue to get serious with. And now just because I didn't align with that, and that's what someone else, the person that I was dating, wanted, doesn't mean that there is issue in wanting that for your family. And the reality is there are women out there, many, whose dream and aspirations are to be stay-at-home mothers. And that's incredible. And that's amazing. And I just hate that for them, society and people on the outside look in and say, oh, you're oppressed. Oh, you don't have a voice. You don't have a say. I like to assume strength. I assume we are all smart enough to step out of the culture, to step out of what we've seen done traditionally and ask ourselves what we want. And Zach in the show, he makes a comment that proves that he didn't step back for a while and it was causing pain in their relationship. He says, I think a lot of people who are raised in the church are raised in a particular way and they don't even realize some of the patterns. I've put a lot of pressure on myself and on Jen to be a certain way. And I'm hoping moving forward, we can be a little more authentic to ourselves. And I do see that in our church, that sometimes we are just raised a certain way, so we expect certain things, and then we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to like reach that expectation. But we can step back and ask ourselves the why and ask ourselves what we really want. And I really, everyone who listens to this podcast is definitely smart enough and knows to do that. We're not going to look back on our lives and regret the decisions that we made. And I hate that people assume that women feel that way when they've made the choice to stay home with their children. Okay, moving on in this story, I want to talk about something that I've seen circulating a lot on social media and happened in episode 2. It is when Taylor has a family barbecue with Dakota and her parents. So quick recap, Taylor, Frankie Paul is dating Dakota. They have a child together. But honestly, their relationship has been very messy from the start. They both bring a lot of baggage. Taylor's dad brutally put it, he said that their relationship is on a foundation of crap. I think he used the S word, but you get the point. Recently in the show, in the timeline of the show, Taylor found out that Dakota lied about sleeping with another girl back when they had first started seeing each other. She felt super used and betrayed, especially since he'd sworn up and down multiple times, especially in the last season, that nothing happened. So they break up. But then Taylor's parents have a barbecue and invite Dakota. And suddenly we have a full-blown family intervention about their relationship. And it's pretty cringe and really sad. So before we get into the awful things that her dad says, and I talk about that, I want to talk about something that I do see a lot in Utah. Maybe you see it as well. But tends to be weird dynamics when families live really close to each other, like when the siblings and parents and the in-laws all live relatively close. I often see parents get into their adult children's relationships in an unhealthy way. And that's exactly what is happening here with Taylor and Dakota. Taylor's family is trying to micromanage her breakup as if it's their job to solve her problems and to play therapist over family barbecue. And it made me laugh because I know dynamics like this. And I think we just need to let two adults be two adults and figure out their issues on their own without having a full family powwow over mistakes and breakups. It's funny because even the scriptures teach us that when a man gets married, he shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife. And this principle, we need to take it to heart sometimes. This is my unsolicited advice. If you are a parent, back off. Your job is to support, not control, or be involved in your adult children's relationships at all. And if you're an adult child, set boundaries. It's okay and very healthy to tell your parents, this is between me and her, me and him. Thank you. Bye-bye. And Taylor, you're never going to listen to this, but I wish you would stand up for herself and just get out of that situation, because it's so unhealthy when they start berating her for her breakup when they don't even really understand the circumstances. And if it's not bad enough that they're trying to micromanage the relationship while they're talking, here's the real issue from this scene. Taylor's trying to explain to her family why she's hurt and angry at Dakota. She shares that they had just met and Dakota was sleeping with another girl while he was hooking up with her. And Dakota defends himself and says, well, we had only known each other for 2 or 3 days. It wasn't serious yet. So Taylor's dad takes his finger, puts it right in her face and says, you had met him 3 times and he came over and you had sex with him? What does that say about you? Oh my gosh. Notice how quickly the whole conversation is about Taylor and not Dakota's dishonesty or his actions. Because apparently if you're the woman, you carry the shame. and you're responsible, as if there's not two people that are involved when you have sex. And so the impact of this comment hits Taylor immediately, and she yells, "I'm trash." And it's honestly heartbreaking to watch. Now, I've seen a lot of ex-LDS people online saying this scene is exactly how Mormons react in situations like this. Like, they blame women, they shame them, they lack empathy, and they make everything the woman's issue and never point fingers at men. And I get why people are saying that, but let's call out what's actually happening here, because I don't think that this one man's action is a reflection on how all of us would react in this situation. This isn't Mormon doctrine, okay? There is nothing that tells us to react this way. This is a father who is mishandling a situation, and he is totally failing his daughter emotionally. It's sad because you see kind of how this has impacted Taylor. Like, I'm using a little bit of my imagination, but I feel like I can see why Taylor is the way she is when, like, this is how her family talks to her. Our beliefs obviously teach that both men and women are accountable for their choices, okay? Both need grace, both need to repent. Not one carries more guilt than the other, okay? I think because Taylor is his daughter, he feels like he can target the attack at her because Dakota isn't his son, and so he's feeling more of the remorse for what his daughter has done. It still does not justify saying that to her or shaming her that way. But Taylor's like comprehension of like her value and how God feels about her seems to be reflected in the way that her parents talk to her. And it's just kind of sad, like, because it's not true. It's not what we believe. I want to tell Taylor to listen to Sister Runia's most recent General Conference talk about your worth not going down in the God's eyes because of mistakes that you make. But Taylor says some things after this scene. She says, "I think I was punished for what I did. Like, God wants me to feel what I did to my other husband." And it's sad because you see her understanding of God shaped by this interaction. Not just this interaction, but shaped by the way that her family has treated her. I just want Taylor to know, like, her worth does not go down in God's eyes because of what she's done. And God does not work on some twisted karma system where he makes you suffer as payback for mistakes and sins that we've made. Like, that's just so clear, and that it's sad to me that she's not sure about that and she's confused about that. Like, yes, there are natural consequences to our choices, but those are just what they are. They're natural consequences. They're not, God's not up there gleefully orchestrating your pain to prove a point to you. In fact, he just offers healing. He offers grace. He offers a pathway forward. He offers love. And I go back to what I said in the beginning. Like, I just want Taylor to feel that. I want her to go to church. I want her to have someone to tell her that, instead of her teachings from the church coming just from what her parents are saying to her. An interesting scene that happens later in the show regarding Taylor and Dakota's story. Remember, they have a child together. Taylor says that she understands why the church has the standards it does. She's like, the church doesn't advise sex before marriage because it causes emotional turmoil and unhealthy relationships with attachment. And she feels the weight of that now that she has a child, and she's upset that he has to grow up in this split home because it doesn't seem like Dakota and Taylor are going to be able to remedy this. And I think that's good. Like, I think Taylor is making the right choice by separating herself from Dakota. It's like she could move on. But yeah, she's by far my favorite character of the show, and I just want her to like really know these things and know her worth beyond like what she believes right now. So they wrap up this whole chaotic family gathering. Everyone's like crying and yelling and finger pointing, and they wrap it up with a prayer, and it feels so weird. It's honestly a little bit jarring in the show when they do pray. Not because prayer is weird, but because you've been watching something so dysfunctional, and then all of a sudden you're reminded, oh, these people are Mormon and they pray just like me. And it's like, I've almost forget that they're Mormon, and because the behavior is so crazy on screen, and then it brings me back to, oh yeah, this is a show about my faith, and the prayer scenes were just always so kind of funny to me. They just felt so out of place, and so yeah, that's how they ended this family gathering, is with a prayer, and it was kind of interesting. Okay, moving on in the story. I think it was episode 3, maybe it's 4. The one time that I felt the Spirit in the show is when Whitney gives birth. There's this sweet, just like monologue moment where she's talking about how she generally feels the closest to heaven when she gives birth, and it's the greatest miracle, the greatest thing anyone can experience. And she says that it's so easy to get caught up in the world, but every time I hold a baby, like, I'm reminded of what matters the most in life. And I just felt like ditto to that. Like I said, I felt the Spirit. It was refreshing to see. I only got 5 minutes of refresh, and then it was back to the toxic drama. So diving into episode 4, this is hands down one of the funniest moments of the season. Layla says... So, okay, wait, let me back up a second. Layla's one of the girls on the show, and I would say her only unique storyline is that she has never orgasmed. Okay, and she's been married for 2 years. Now she's divorced, and she's had multiple partners since. And she says this, and this is what is so funny to me. She says, something that's kind of ingrained in our church is that you're not supposed to enjoy sex until you're married. And I just laugh because I'm like, Layla, it's not that you're not supposed to enjoy sex until you're married. It's not that you're not supposed to have sex at all until you're married. Like, if you're going to have sex, at least enjoy it. Like, if you're going to do it. Just kidding. I'm joking. I don't encourage premarital sex. But, like, you don't have to be Mormon to recognize that saving sex for marriage has its benefits. Like, studies consistently show that couples who wait until marriage report higher relationship satisfaction, better communication, more stability in the relationship. Because I looked into this, I even found one study that suggested that those who wait to have sex until after marriage also have a more positive and fulfilling sex life. So no, I'm not falling for the societal hype that premarital sex is the ultimate path to sexual empowerment. And that is, of course, one of the narratives of this show, and something that they kind of mock is our prudeness. And I really don't care what you're going to call me, and I'm not going to fall for it. But the peak cringe moment of the whole season is when Demi throws a break, like a remove the taboo party, where she's throwing a sex party for Layla to help her orgasm. And they have this sex expert. I don't even know who she was, but they have this woman come, and she pretty much just like puts a whole bunch of sex toys out on the table and talks to the women about enjoying their sex life. And they do something called she called it sensational play. They were literally brushing feathers on each other's arms and asking, like, how do you like it? Do you want it harder? Do you want it softer? Like, you can tell, though, this whole time that the girls are so uncomfortable. Like, it was the cringiest moment. It was so weird. Layla, who this whole party is for, like, is having the worst time. I think Maisie at the end, she says, ew, I didn't like that one bit. And I get the point of the party, like, removing the taboo that sex is bad and shouldn't be enjoyed. And I'm all for that. Like, you guys know I've had a sex therapist on my podcast to talk about the impacts of our faith and how it can impact our sex life in the negative, and how we can overcome the taboo so better enjoy it. And actually, fun fact, she's coming back on the podcast very soon. So we're going to be doing an anonymous Q&A. So watch for that. I'll actually probably post and ask for those responses over the weekend. So submit your questions that you want to ask a sex therapist who is a member of the church, because I think we should talk about sex in a healthy, open way and make sure we're all more equipped to thrive and have better sex lives. But the reason why this scene is so cringe and I'm not for it is because they're doing these like weird intimate exercises with girls that they're not even friends with. Like, you guys don't even like each other, and you're like trying to help turn each other on. It's like the strangest thing. Yeah, I have nothing to say other than, like, it was just bad. Okay. I have no other things to say about that scene. Okay. The next several episodes, I really just wrote in my notes. It's just mean girls galore. Like, there is just drama. There's so much gossiping. There is so many accusations, and they like hold on to like the dumbest things. One of them being like Jen told the girls that she was related to Ben Affleck, and they like hold it to her, and they're like, you're such a liar for telling us that, when it was like Jen was told that by Zach's relatives. Again, it's just the stupidest drama, and I'm not convinced any of it is real because it is just so dumb. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to get into like some of those storylines because I don't really feel like there's much to talk about there in regards to our faith. I just think at the end of the day, like, this whole show, like the whole premise is that MomTok is women supporting each other and they empower women. But this is the most toxic and delusional group of women that I have ever seen on TV. So I think you're fooling no one. But we're all watching. And I think it's kind of sad because it feels to me that production is just taking advantage of these women. Like, these women are going through horrible things and their lives are getting torn apart over this show. And it doesn't matter to anyone because it's entertainment for the rest of us. So it's just sad. And it's crazy to me that they sign up for this. Like, they all want this so bad. There's nothing enticing about that to me. Okay. So like I said, there's lots of episodes of just a whole bunch of junk. And then towards the end of the season, there is a conversation that the women have about temple sealings. And I actually got a lot of DMs to talk about this topic. Again, it was one of those jarring moments for me when I remembered, oh, these women are Mormon. They're all like sitting around a table and they all of a sudden start reciting the old young women's theme. And then they end up like mocking it and saying that it sounds super cultish, which is like, okay, super cool. Like, it's just a really beautiful theme with really beautiful teachings that brings me the spirit when I hear it recited. But okay, yeah, you could call us culty because of it. But Macy goes on to share that when you turn 13 years old, you go into Young Women's. And this was confusing to me too, because I thought Macy was the only active member on the show. And then she says this, you start Young Women's when you're 13 years old. And I'm like, sis, you start Young Women's when you're 11 years old now. And when you were in Young Women's, it was 12. Like, never has it ever been 13. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe at one point it was 13. But I know when she was a Young Woman, it was 12. And if you are an active member of the church, you know that it's 12, kind of 11 now. And so now I'm not even convinced Macy goes to church. But going back to the temple conversation, calling us a cult because of the young women's reciting the theme, they then go into talking about the temple. And Jessie talks about how she was sealed to her first husband. And one thing that bothers her is that in the next life, according to Mormonism, she will still be connected to her ex, not her current husband. And Jessie, that is not what we teach. That's not what we believe. Even if you didn't break that sealing, although sealings are binding on earth and heaven, it does not tie you to someone that you do not want to be tied to. God is not going to take away your agency in the next life. So just because you're still sealed to your ex does not mean you will have to be tied to him for eternity. We don't teach that. We don't believe that. Please stop making claims like that to justify your current stance with leaving the church. Like, that's not a thing. Then we have Miranda talking about her ex, and she says that one thing that bothered her in-laws is her ex removed his records from the church, and now her children who were sealed to them will not receive those blessings. And again, that is a false teaching. When someone removes their church records, it does not automatically invalidate an existing temple sealing. The church's policy is that sealings are not affected by record removal, and a sealing remains in place even if an individual removes their records from the church. I pulled this from the church's website. The church's process for removing records involves a request from the individual, and the local leaders will then remove the record from the church database. The process does not invalidate any existing sealings. Okay, so we debunked that one. Then the next claim that is made is they say that men can make it to heaven by themselves, but women can't make it without men. Ladies, I honestly, maybe I should offer to go on the show to do a doctrine principles lesson with the women, because it goes both ways. It's not that men can get there without women and women can't. It's that men can't get there without women and women can't get there without men. We have to hitch ourselves to one another. I kind of want to do a whole episode on sealings and what we know and what we don't know about the next life, because I think that even very active members don't know the true doctrine and from the speculation. So I think it would be an interesting episode to do, because I even want to deep dive and learn more about it myself. But just to be clear, again, salvation is an individual matter. Exaltation is a family matter. Individually, you can be saved through Christ. If you want to reach exaltation, you do need to be married. And that is true for men and women. Men can't get there without women. Okay, that is all the notes that I took that I wanted to discuss on this episode. So now I'm going to go to some DMs that I had sent to me, and we can go and talk about them together. This person says, can we talk about the friendship aspect? Zach nails it on the head. He says, these aren't real friendships. Friends don't do this stuff to each other. I'm in Tennessee, and so many of my non-member friends ask me all the time if Mormon girls are this catty and petty to each other as they are on this show. And I realize that some of these relationships are orchestrated for the show, but I feel like we should be telling our girls that this is not a friend circle to aspire to, especially young moms that are just looking for community in the hardest stages of life. A friend that genuinely loves you will never make you feel terrible about yourself or berate you or condescend to you in private or in public like these girls do to each other. The Savior provides peace and acceptance and service through wholesome friendships. Just my random thoughts from season 2. I love those thoughts, and it's so true that the friend group that you need in this young stage of motherhood is one that builds you up, one that is your support system. I can't imagine if my friend group created drama in my life the way this friend group does. That would be so painful. The women community of mothers that I have in my life are such a huge support, and we lean on each other, and we have great discussions, and we help each other to grow. And I'm just sad for them that this is their friend group, and I hope that, gosh, your friends in Tennessee know that this is not normal. I am in Provo, Utah. I feel like I'm neighbors with some of these women, and my friend group is not reflected at all in this show. Okay, moving on to another comment. This person said, can we talk about the part where Demi has the idea to go skinny dipping, and then she calls Brett and he tells her no, so she doesn't? First, she said she wouldn't do it because her stepkids watched the show, yet they're going to be watching her throw a sex party, wear only lingerie, and have their dad do a Chip and Dale's routine on another married woman. And 2, if Jen and any other girl's husband had told them they couldn't skinny dip, she would have berated them for being oppressed and having a controlling husband. You hit it on the head. Demi is very, very hypocritical throughout the whole show, and I think you called her out pretty good. This person shared, I feel like production tries really hard to make the show relevant to the church, even though in my opinion it's not, and none of these girls are actively practicing. It made me cringe hearing the church teaches us to love your neighbors, yada, yada, yada. The church teaches us, yada, 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 as they're screaming at each other and being so mean. I don't know. Those sentences always felt very staged, very scripted. Honestly, I think this season in general felt way more scripted. And I was glad to receive this comment because I felt the exact same way. None of it comes off authentic. All right, this next comment says, they assume that Jen and Zach don't prevent, meaning they don't believe in birth control. And I didn't catch that, but I kind of wasn't paying total attention the whole season, but Jen and Zach do get pregnant, and Jen is so upset by it because her marriage is not in a good place and she mentally is in such a bad place. They get pregnant, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the girls are critical of them and make the judgment that they don't use protection or prevent as if it's a belief system. I know that's something that people have said in the past or think that we believe in our church, is that you can't use birth control or you can't prevent. And it's a hard one to argue against, because although that's not the church's stance now, they did have a stance against birth control a long time ago. So I'm just grateful that I live in this generation where it is not, they don't give advice one way or the other. And I'm also grateful for the faithful members who had tons of children so that the church can grow, and like we're in the space that we are now because I'm reaping those benefits. So it's an interesting topic. This comment says, they're not fighting patriarchy, they're fighting orthodoxy. It's interesting to see people who grew up in hyper-religious environments leave and go on to have problems with alcohol, sex, scandals, etc. I didn't grow up a member of the church, and I've watched some of my friends who have left go on to rebel in major ways, and I always think, that's not normal behavior outside of the church, right? Like, even secular societies recognize the pain of cheating, sex addictions, excessive drinking, drugs, divorce, etc. It's true, and I see that too, that sometimes people think that they have to go so far on the other side to experience life because they've felt like they've lived these rules so tedious, but then they don't recognize that like there are actual just like morals. Like you can have morals outside of religion, and following those morals can protect your life and your marriage and some of the best aspects of living. And so it's kind of painful to see because, like you don't have to be a marriage counselor to know that swinging is going to hurt a marriage. You know what I mean? Like these women sometimes do things that are so obviously negative for their life, but because of their upbringing, I don't know, because of their Mormon background, they don't see that and it's not clear to them. So it's interesting. I also like how you said it's not fighting patriarchy, it's fighting orthodoxy. That's true. This person says, OMG, this season had so much more, quote, the Mormon church teaches, etc. And most of them were cultural things. Ha ha ha. My favorite was the haunted house and making them seem like it was a sin. And it's true. Like, again, it was so unauthentic and so unnatural for them to be like, they're going to a haunted house because it's Halloween. And the girls are like, I don't like, the church like teaches like to avoid like devils and dark things, and I don't know, maybe a haunted house falls in that category. It's like, what are you saying? What are you talking about? All right, I wanted to end with this comment. She says, something I was actually so surprised at was how they talked a lot about the importance of kindness, forgiveness, and loving one another. Apart from the odd few weird comments like how divorce is frowned upon, which was jarring, I actually wasn't mad about how they talked about the church this go around. I think they tried harder to capture the very basic principles of Christianity, which I deeply appreciate. And I am glad you said this comment to me, because I think because I do the podcast, sometimes I watch something like this and I am so hyper focused on the things that were done wrong that I don't see the things that were always done right. And I definitely did that when watching this show. Because I know in the back of my head I want to make a response to the things that were wrong, I don't notice the things that were good. And there were moments that were good. And a couple of them, for example, I loved when Whitney went to Jen's house and she realized Jen was not in a good place, and so she helped Jen clean around her house, and she just stayed with Jen until she knew that Zach would be there. I felt like that was authentic. I thought that was kind, and that is something that would totally naturally happen when you are serving and looking out for the people in your life. And then another time that I thought was tender was when Michaela and Macy went to visit the wreck spot where Macy lost her boyfriend. He died in a car wreck. And Macy's very upset and she's sad. And Michaela offers to say a prayer for Macy. And Michaela is like one of the girls who is not been in the church for a really long time, and she's pretty open about like leaving the church and just not being in the church. So she's not involved in the church, but she offers to give this prayer for Macy, knowing it will comfort Macy, because Macy is more involved in the church and it means something to her. And it just felt like a really genuine prayer, and it was just this tender moment of goodness. And so you're right. There are moments where they do a good job. And I appreciate that. I hope we can see more of that in the future. I think forgiveness is going to have to be a really big emphasis moving forward, because the way the season ends is the girls' friendship is just a wreck, and there's a lot of pain and a lot of hurt. And the only way that MomTok is going to survive is if they forgive, as we are taught to do by our Savior. All right, friends. Well, I think I'm going to end it here. This was such a fun chit chat. Thanks for joining me. I genuinely am so grateful for you, and I hope that you have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk next week. Bye.